Greetings, HilltopParker and Pastor Olive. I have a story for you, and it's about Jonah, son of Amittai, and something that happened to him. Well, this is what happened. God spoke to Jonah, and he said, Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh, that very wicked city, and I want you to tell them that I am disgusted by their behavior. Well, that was weird. Everybody knew that Nineveh was a very bad place. Nineveh was the enemy of the whole world. They were a rogue city, part of a rogue people. And everybody knew that Nineveh was wicked and that their behavior was disgusting. So why was God asking Jonah to do this thing? Well, Jonah did the only sensible thing, and that was he decided to go in the opposite direction of Nineveh. So Jonah started going down. He went down to Joppa, and then he went down to the seacoast, and then he found a boat, and he went down into the hold of the boat, and soon he had gone down into the unconsciousness of sleep. You see, he was bound for Tarshish, which you might think was the opposite end of the world in that day to Nineveh. But his plans were about to change. You see, God was so angry that God caused a storm to come up over the ocean. And it wasn't just any storm. I mean, this was a storm of the century. It was so frightening that the sailors did something that they're not known for doing. They started to pray. Sailors praying. When was the last time you heard somebody say of somebody else, well, that one prays like a sailor? Well, that's what they were doing. They were praying and asking from all the gods to save them. But not Jonah. Jonah was still down in the bottom of the boat, in the hold, fast asleep. And when the captain of the boat saw this, he went down and shook him and said, Jonah, Jonah, wake up! Pray to your God. Maybe your God will save us. But instead of praying, Jonah said, well, you see, God and I aren't on speaking terms right now. What? Said the captain. You see, I'm on this boat because I'm not doing what God told me to do, and that's why there's this storm. The only thing you can do is throw me overboard. That's the only thing that's going to make my God happy. Well, that's not our policy, said the captain. So they started throwing everything else that they could, to lighten the load of the boat in the storm. But it didn't work. So they took a vote and they said, well, there's only one thing left to do or we're all going to perish, Jonah. We've got to throw you overboard. You see, I told you. And so they apologized, but over the side went Jonah. And you know what? As soon as his feet hit that water, the sea was calm and the storm stopped. Well, that caused all the sailors to worship Jonah's God, because that God had such power. Well, while the sailors on the boat were getting religion, Jonah was getting swallowed up by a big fish. You might say it was God's water taxi. And there he was in the big fish in the belly. And the only thing there was to do was to pull together some prayers that he remembered from his childhood and a few verses from the Psalms that he had learned to quote. And he spoke these prayers, but basically it all boiled down to one word: help. And so by the time that the big fish, the water taxi, had gotten to the destination, the big fish vomited Jonah up on the shore and went on its way. And then God said to Jonah, "Now that I have your attention, I want you to go to Nineveh, and this is what I want you to say. Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." It was to be the shortest sermon in the history of homiletics. And maybe that's why it was so effective. Because Jonah went into the city of Nineveh with a big bell. "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." Notice he didn't tell them what they needed to do so that they wouldn't be overthrown. But he continued, "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." And then he had the first success of his evangelical career. Everybody repented, all the way from the king down to the lowest poor peasant. Even the animals, the cattle, they all wore sackcloth and ashes. Imagine the dogs and cats going around in sackcloth and ashes. Everybody repented. Now you would think that this successful outcome of his mission would have pleased Jonah. But no, it just made him angry. And he looked around. While he was waiting for the destruction to happen, maybe a ball of fire from heaven, or maybe an earthquake would swallow them up, just like the fish had swallowed him up. But no, God repented. Well, Jonah spoke to God. "You see, I knew this would happen. I knew that you were a kind and compassionate God, one who was slow to anger. I knew you wouldn't follow through. I knew that you'd turn around and that these people would get off the hook. I went to all this trouble to get here to preach what you told me to preach, and then this happens." Oh, God said to Jonah, "Well, what are you so peeved about?" Jonah didn't say anything. He just went off outside the city and sat on the side of a hill to sulk. So God caused a plant to grow up. It was a castor oil plant, which was God's little joke because he knew that Jonah had digestive problems. So the plant comes up and gave Jonah some shade in the hot, hot sun. But did Jonah thank God? No. And then God appointed a worm to kill the plant, and the plant shriveled and died. And Jonah said, "Oh, I am better off dead. Just take me, God. I don't want to live like this anymore." And then God said to Jonah, "I don't understand why you're so angry at the people of Nineveh and at me You're worried more about this plant that I caused to grow up and then to die than you are about the fate of all my people, Jonah. Jonah, those kids in Nineveh, they're my kids too. How can you be so concerned about a plant and not be concerned about their souls? Jonah, they don't know their right hand from their left. That means that they've lost their moral compass. Don't you get it? Shouldn't I be concerned about a people that have lost their moral compass and don't know which is the right way to go? Well, that's where the story ends. We don't know if Jonah got up and maybe finally changed his mind about the people of Nineveh. But God's story certainly goes on. God, being a kind and compassionate God and slow to anger, looks for those who perhaps have lost their moral compass and are acting like they don't know their right hand from the left. What do you make of a God that would save even a people like that? I wonder.